for the Lovable Me Show. Based on the award-winning book series, I Am a Lovable Me. Get ready to have some fun learning with Lovable, our resident enlightening bug. Are you ready? Close your eyes and let's count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Now open them. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Lovable Me Show. I'm Sharon Penchina, your host and author of the award-winning I Am a Lovable Me books for children. Well, today we're in for a big treat. I have a special guest joining in, and she's going to give us her take on meditation and sound healing. But before I introduce her, I want to take a couple of minutes to give you a quick overview of the 5 different states of brainwave activity, since sound frequencies are part of the conversation today, and they happen to have a direct impact on brainwave activity. Keep in mind, at the root of all our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors is the communication between neurons within our brain. Brainwaves are produced by synchronized electrical pulses from masses of neurons communicating with each other. Okay, let's begin our quick review. First up are the beta waves. This is when you are wide awake, you're alert, your mind is sharp and focused. And it makes connections quite easily and quickly. You're primed to do your work, and that any work that requires your full attention, you'll be ready to get going on that. When we're a bit more relaxed, our brainwave activity slows down and we experience our alpha waves. This state is a very pleasurable one. It's also essential to stress reduction, and it produces high levels of creativity. Now, when the brainwave activity slows down even more, the result is theta waves. Theta is one of the more extraordinary brain states. It's also known as the twilight state. You normally only experience this state fleetingly upon waking or drifting off to sleep, and it's a deeply meditative state. As we continue to slow down a bit even more, we come to the delta waves. In the delta state, you are sound asleep. Delta waves are the slowest of all the brainwave frequencies. And last but not least are the gamma waves. Gamma waves are in fact the fastest of the brainwave frequencies. It also signifies the highest state of focus with peak concentration. Neuroscientists believe that gamma waves are able to link information from all parts of the brain. So now we have our review. Now, in reference to my guest today, we can use an analogy to think of brain waves as musical notes. The low frequency waves are like a deeply penetrating drum beat, while the higher frequency brain waves are more like a subtle high-pitched flute. That said, let me tell you about Katie Underwood. Katie is a certified meditation teacher with a diploma in sound healing therapy with AccuSound International. She has a certificate in traditional Tibetan sound healing, where she studied with Lama Tender, the Dalai Lama's chant master, and I hope I got that name right. She also trained with Grammy Award winner Jonathan Goldman, and she is also certified in yoga of sound. She has over 30 years of experience in singing and music performance, and worked as a professional musician and recording artist for over 20 years. She now combines her skilled musicianship with a passion for healing to deliver a powerful session of guided meditation, healing sounds, and vocal toning. Over the last 5 years, she has helped thousands of people access deeper states of relaxation and connection in her sound meditation events by using her unique blend of soothing live music, vocals, and group toning. Katie, welcome to the Lovable Me Show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Well, I think this is going to be a really fascinating topic, and to just kick things off, I just wanted you to give us a little bit of an overview. Tell us how you got involved in sound and sound healing.
Sure. I suppose my journey into sound began when I was very, very young. And a little piece of trivia that your listeners, your audience may or may not know, sound is actually the first sense that we develop in the womb. And in fact, it's the last sense that we retain when we die. So even when all of our visual senses and physical senses are gone, sound is the last thing we hear. So just a little bit of trivia. So I think my journey into sound began even before I was born. But technically speaking, I started playing piano at the age of 6. I joined my school choir at 9. I then joined a more advanced choir at 12, stayed with them for 12 years. So I had a really strong background and passion and skill for music very early on. Professionally, though, I ended up auditioning for a pop band when I was 24, which was not part of my plan, but that's what happened. And we became incredibly successful in Australia and through Southeast Asia. So that was quite a distraction from my life path, but I learned a lot in that. Fast forward another 10 years and I ended up independently producing a jazz album and toured with my band with that album for many years. And then my life, I suppose the key changing point in my life was when I had my 2 children. I have twin girls. And I felt that the commercial music industry was not healthy for me and was not supportive of my life and my family. So I changed my whole career and my whole approach. And from there, I became skilled in initially massage, remedial massage or therapeutic massage here in Australia, then a Reiki practitioner. Meanwhile, I was developing my meditation practice, and really it was there that I received the strong insights from Source that I needed to train into sound healing and to finally combine my love of healing and my skill with music and bring that together in a modality where I could be of the most good. That was 5 years ago. And since then, as you've described, I've run well over 100 events in the last 5 years and reached thousands of people. And it's just a joy to bring people into a healing state through those brainwaves you mentioned, helping people relax using sound and using guided voice.
That's amazing. I mean, it's so nice to hear that you were able to marry 2 things that you had such a passion for and that it just evolved the way it did. And the fact that you mentioned that sound is a primary, sense that we develop in the womb, I love that because, I talk about that a lot too. It's, babies are learning in the womb. And they can hear when they're developing in the womb. So, with the work I do, I always like to emphasize the fact that, they can hear what's going on. They hear everything that's going on. So it is important to remember that. I'm wondering if you could give the audience, for any of them that are not aware of what sound healing actually is, to give us a taste of that. Tell us, what is it? What is it? Maybe, what are the effects of it? What does it say? What does it sound and look like and feel like?
Okay, so essentially, sound healing is harnessing the truth that we are all frequency. So quantum mechanics is catching up with the fact that what we believe ourselves to be, that is matter and solid, is not really the truth. And the truth is that at our core, we are simply a collection of frequencies that then manifest physically. So sound healing is about reconnecting people with their true frequency. So every day we're surrounded by devices, computers, cameras, phones, etc., that are emitting their own frequencies. And these frequencies are a necessary part of our lives, but they're not healthy and they can throw us out of balance. So sound healing seeks to realign us with our own natural frequencies so that our bodies can tune back in to where they originate and to tune us back into health. So what does that look like? So you mentioned, or I mentioned, the sound begins in the womb, and this is something that babies connect with. So, for instance, what's the very first sound as human beings before we're born that we hear? Our mother's heartbeat.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
This beautifully consistent rhythm. And this is why in sound healing we learn that the drum beat or any regular beat is instantly soothing. It's a primal core need that helps people feel safe. It's one of the core needs of any human being, to feel safe and a sense of belonging. So when we apply that drum beat, and often I will use drumming in the early parts of my sound healing sessions to really help people tap into that core need for safety and security. And from there, that part of their brain that remembers that feeling of being encased and safe kicks back in. They go, okay, I'm home. So we start there. And from there, we start to introduce rhythms and certain sounds where the brain can entrain with a frequency. So by entrainment, we mean it falls into line. So when you apply a particular beat, for instance, let's say your heartbeat normally runs at 80 beats per minute. Or maybe it's, if you're stressed, it's 100 beats per minute. So when we relax, we want to slow that heartbeat down. So one of the ways we can do this is by applying a rhythm that is slower than your regular heartbeat. And entrainment means that your body naturally wants to fall into rhythm with that beat that it's hearing, that it's experiencing. So this is one of the first ways we can help people relax and come into a relaxed state, slowing the heartbeat, slowing the respiration, slowing the breathing.
And you know, that's, I guess I equate, a lot of what you're doing to some of the things I've been interested in and are part of my work. So something like neuro-linguistic programming, which one of the techniques is a pacing. You want to pace the listener or whomever you're working with into, that state by not just, if you were using sound, not just presenting a sound that is much slower to, let's say, the frequencies or, their vibrational level, you do it as it moves slower. So it's actually a pacing effect, which is easy for us to adjust to. And
correct.
Yeah. So, and as far as the sound healing, because you're talking about a lot of things that really have a science base. It's not, sort of out in left field, and yet out in left field sometimes is great. But there is a real science behind this, and you were talking about beats, and some of my understanding or training has been, using binaural beats. Is that something that you speak to as well?
Yes. So the concept of binaural beats is another way that we can slow the brain waves, and this is very specific. So the way that binaural beats works is generally when you're listening to something, it's about playing sound that is slightly different frequency. So this is how it works. So frequency or pitch, as people would know it generally. So a higher pitch is a higher frequency, a lower pitch is lower frequency. So if you play one frequency, let's say it's 4 hertz in one ear, which would be very, very low, in fact, almost inaudible. Let's bring it up. Let's say it's 100 hertz in one ear, and you play a frequency that is slightly different, almost imperceptibly different in the other ear, 101 hertz. The brain interprets the difference. So if you play 100 in this ear and 101 in that ear, the brain interprets this as, oh, I'm at 1 hertz. Now, 1 hertz is inaudible and you'd be deep into delta waves. But what it does is it kind of tricks the brain into moving into a much, much, much slower brainwave pattern. So alpha waves, I think, are at around 20 hertz, which is lightly relaxed, you mentioned. Theta waves, I think, is it 4 to 7 hertz, and then delta is 4 hertz and below. So we can very quickly, by just playing a very slightly different frequency in the ears, we can trick the brain into relaxing. And when I was doing sound healing in my private sessions, one of the great ways we can do this is using tuning forks. So I should have had them with me.
I
So
love tuning forks.
Yeah. So when we apply tuning forks of very different frequencies in each ear, for the client on the table, their brain just goes, bang, I'm out. It's almost like an instant sedative and they're gone. And from there, then I can apply sound in different ways to affect the body differently. So that's another aspect of how we can use the science of sound and the brain and brain waves, as well as the practice of sound healing to help the client move into a deeply relaxed state.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, another really nice thing about sound and sound healing is that it really doesn't require you to do a lot of thinking. There is, it's all happening very naturally, and the body responds to it quite easily and naturally. So, I just think it's a fantastic modality. Can you share with us some of the therapeutic effects of sound healing, some of the things that you've encountered in the years you've been using it?
So when I'm running my events, I generally will tell people that sound can affect us on the physical level, the emotional level, mental level, and then even spiritual. So we'll start with the physical. So on the physical level, you're slowing the heartbeat, you're slowing the respiration. So this allows the body to move into rest and digest. As it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, it cuts off this. Most people are familiar with the concept of fight or flight. Your adrenaline's pumping, you're ready to go. But often people are stuck in that state and the body doesn't switch off when it needs to. So we're stimulating that parasympathetic response and allowing the body to move into a state of repair and start to heal itself. Then we work with the emotional level. So often when we kind of push the mind, the thinking mind to the side, we allow the body to relax, emotions can come up. And this can happen in any sort of meditative state, which is essentially what sound healing is doing. It's helping a person move into a meditative state. And from there, sometimes emotions can arise. And whether these emotions are challenging, perhaps feelings of grief or frustration or even anger might arise. But from there, we're able to release those states and make more room for feelings of love and peace and relaxation. Mentally, we love our mind. Our mind helps us to do amazing things and we want to be friends with the mind. But when we're trying to relax, it's not needed. And in fact, we can often get in our own way. So one of the benefits that I've had reported in my sessions, because I create a very lush, very full soundscape for people to listen to, there's quite a lot going on. So that helps people to focus on something. Oh, I'm experiencing that sound and that sound. And while they're, for lack of a better word, distracted by those sounds, by default, it brings their focus into the now. And so the mind is not so much worried about what did I do before or last week or yesterday, or what have I got to do tomorrow or next week, where anxiety lives, right? Anxiety lives in the future and regret and pain lives in the past. But when we're in the now, there's such a state of peace there. So it gives the mind something to focus on. Also, as a result of sound healing sessions, some people are more able to access highly awakened, intuitive and spiritual states. Now, what that looks like for each individual varies greatly, but people can find themselves astral traveling or connecting with higher self, with spirit guides, with departed loved ones. All sorts of fascinating things can happen in that state. And again, deep healing can occur as a result of these connections. So
it's interesting. That was going to be my next question for you. I really wanted to hear more about that, and maybe you'll tell us a little bit more about that. sound when I was a practicing hypnotherapist, aside from using, words and acting as a guide or signpost, so to speak, for them in guiding them to, to wherever they needed to go. Music was an integral part also, and music along with, some of those NLP techniques and also human heartbeat slowing down, all of those things help to really elicit deeply relaxed states where I found that my clients became more open, open to whatever it was that, was something that, as you were saying, something would come up either on an emotional level or physical level, mental level, something that it almost made room and space and an open space for that to occur. And a lot of times that was, very revealing and cathartic. So I know that music and sound and all of that can do that. And I think just, when we think about listening to a song, something that we heard, maybe 10 years, 20 years ago, we hear the sound and immediately it elicits, a mood or a feeling, right?
And often we're transported in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the memory that is associated with that sound or that song. Suddenly we're transported back to a time that we remember fondly. So in that way, I think people are able to quite literally time travel either along their own timeline in this life, or even potentially, I've had people report what I could only describe as connections with past lives, where they remember, oh, I was we'll do a toning circle where I have, 100 women in a circle toning into a central point, and people will come back to me and go, it felt so familiar. I felt like I was there back, 100 years ago. And it's fascinating to me how people can connect with either parts of their own life, their own single life, and this one, or potentially far beyond that. So it's exciting when people report these things, and it brings them such a sense of peace and centered, grounded being.
Yes, absolutely. And, when you think of, healing, I immediately think of, a reduction of stress, a reduction of anxiety or fear, and actuality, those things we know are at the cause of so much pain and suffering and illness, that in of itself is a huge benefit, but there's so much more. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about how either you apply sound in working with children, or how parents and caregivers and teachers, anyone who's watching, might think about integrating sound, into their work or their teaching or their parenting to assist their child.
Look, children naturally have an affinity for sound. We all do. And I think it's about delivering the sort of sound that your child connects with. So I can't say that there's one particular sound that's going to appeal to all children, but I think, my encouragement to parents is take the time to explore the sorts of sounds that your child can connect with. And also, kids like to be active. So when I'm running family sound meditation events where I've invited parents of children with age between, let's say, 6 and 12, the meditations or the mindfulness practices are much shorter. And there's also a period of interaction. So not just about getting the children to listen to certain sounds and to direct them to think about, okay, when we're playing this drum, where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your belly? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel the sound vibrations tickling in your feet? We wanted to make it fun, but by bringing their attention to how the sound feels in their body or makes them feel emotionally, we're bringing them into that state of mindfulness. So it's that measure of exploring. So in my adult events, I use a number of different instruments, and Tibetan bowls would be one of them, and drums. Now, in my adult sessions, people are generally just listening. But when I was running the family meditations, I would break our meditation for the children to have a chance to interact with the bowls themselves. So letting them use the mallet and invite the sound from the bowl, and really connect with the sound, connect with the instrument, and feel a part of it. And in that way, we're exposing them to these natural frequencies, these soothing frequencies that these instruments naturally produce, but delivering it in a more accessible way for that age group, particularly the younger children. So I think, just take the opportunity to play, to interact with sound. And like yoga, we might have an action part of the session where we're allowing the children to be active. And then at the end of our time, we go, okay, now we're going to lay flat. We're going to breathe deeper, and we're just going to listen. And it might just be 10 minutes. And that's quite a long time if you're 6 years old, But that's enough. I remember being told once that the ideal time for us to meditate per age is a minute for every year we're alive.
Oh,
so
good to know.
To get as a rough guide. So to give you that context, if you have a 6-year-old child, getting them to be still for 6 minutes is incredible. And any parent of children that age will tell you it might be a downright miracle to get your 6-year-old to be still. So just being aware to not have the expectation that they're going to be lying in savasana or some other relaxed pose for long, long periods. So for your 3-year-old, if they're able to sit with their eyes closed and breathe for 3 minutes, that's great. And that might be enough. So that would be my other advice for parents. If you're trying to introduce meditation, introduce sound, just really shorten the time periods and let that be enough.
Yeah. And, while you were talking about that, I was thinking that if parents had an instrument that, like you were just mentioning drums as one, the singing bowls. I know when my grandkids come over, they love those singing bowls. They're always playing them because they're a lot of fun to play, and they, really go at it. And then we talk about, sort of lowering the frequency and the vibration by going slower, and it really helps them to notice that they can kind of control that, and it doesn't have to be so, loud and out there. It's something that does allow them to be very present, and once that's happening, I hear that it's the tones and the rate at which they're going at it changes. So that's something nice to do with kids, and maybe in conjunction with the meditation and the breathing and the playing the instruments, one after the other kind of helps to increase the session you might have with them, or just keeping it short. But it's really a nice thing to do with kids. So what would you say is, there might be something that we just don't know, or we'd be surprised to find out about sound healing. And it sounds like you've had a very full history in terms of sound, music, and everything that you've done. What might we be surprised about, or that we just don't know about it, that we should know?
I think one of the things that never ceases to amaze me is the diverse ways that sound can affect people. I mean, when I think about it, there's so many stories that people will come and tell me about in their experience with sound. So one of the things that was popping into my head then is the way sound can really work to heal the body naturally. So often people who have chronic pain will come up to me after a session and say, when you started using certain sounds, this part of my body that normally hurt, it started to hurt more. And they will sit with that pain for a period, and then it will release, and they'll say, and now the pain is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that pain relief, I'm not talking about miracle cure, but for anyone who lives with chronic pain, to relieve their pain for a moment, for a minute, for an hour, for a day is a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about non-prescriptive ways of dealing with pain. So I find that very exciting, and the people who share that with me are amazed.
Mm-hmm.
And another way I made reference to, that sound can open the doorway for people to spiritually connect. When I started doing these events very, very early on, I was working with a small group, and I used to work in a drug and alcohol recovery center, and I would deliver these sound sessions for the clients there. And there was one lady who attended. She would have been well into her probably late 50s, and she'd never done anything like this before. She'd never meditated before. And I started delivering the session. I was doing some drumming and some vocals and some Tibetan bowls. And about 15 minutes in, I could see tears streaming down her face. She was lying still. She wasn't upset, but these tears were pouring down her face. And I thought, okay, she's having a really profound experience.
Yeah.
At the end, a real profound experience. So at the end of the session, she sort of got herself together, and she said, I have to tell you, I just had the most incredible experience. She said, I just had a visitation from my grandmother. I said, oh, wow. I said, does that sort of thing, happen to you? She goes, never in my life, my whole life, has this ever happened. She said, but the amazing thing is, we were very, very close, and she passed when I was 14 years old, and I couldn't get to her in time, and she couldn't say goodbye. And that the pain of that departure and not having that good final goodbye stayed with her. She said, it's been 40 years. And she's come to me in this moment. She said, it just broke me and healed me at the same time. And that was, again, woman of, mid-50s, and she was very stoic otherwise.
Yeah.
But to see her heart opening up in a way that she could never have even predicted was just such a delight. So there's so many other stories I could share with you. And I think that's just the exciting thing, is I'm constantly surprised and amazed at how sound can heal people physically, emotionally, connect them spiritually. It's just a joy.
Yeah, absolutely. I just go back to, I think it allows since everything is energy, our energy shifts, we become more receptive to whether it's connecting with a loved one or suddenly, some uncomfortable feeling comes up because it's time, and we've created a space for it to be let go or released. It's like, it doesn't really require a lot of thinking. We've just allowed ourselves to depart from the outer world, and we are in a state where we are receptive. And as far as healing, the body is a self-healing mechanism. So when you remove interference and, obstacles in our path, which it sounds like sound is a great tool to do that, so many things are possible.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Before we end for today, which, I'd love to maybe down the road have you come back, because I'd love you to bring on those tuning forks and anything else that you'd like to. I would like you to share, because I may have missed some information. I mean, you really have a history of, so many accomplishments. And if I missed something in my intro for you, excuse me about that. And if you want to share anything, specific, how the viewers can get a hold of you or anything you want them to know, please go ahead and do that now, Katie.
Oh, sure, I will. Look, I mean, I have had a long history with music, but I will just say on that, the thing I'm enjoying now about working with sound as a healing tool rather than sound as a performer is that when you're a performer, when you're a recording artist and a pop star or all of the things that I've been in the past, the attention was on me. Now, there's no healing for my audience when their attention is on me. But when I'm facilitating these events as a meditation teacher and a sound healing guide, it brings their energy back into themselves. And that's where the healing occurs. So it's not so important for people to know what I've done in the past, but if they want to look me up and find more information, my website is underwoodhealing.com. So from there, you'll find links to my Facebook page, my Instagram page, and other ways people can connect with my music. I have produced 2 albums of relaxation, meditation music, so I would encourage people to look at those. And on the subject of children, I've had many people report that when their children listen to those albums at bedtime, that it helps them to settle. And more specifically for parents with children on the spectrum, they've found also that kids, particularly on the spectrum, because there's a lot to engage them, that sound makes them feel safe and enclosed and can have a very, very calming effect. So I would certainly encourage parents of children of any type to explore that music and see how it interacts with them. That's all from me.
That's beautiful. No, that's terrific. And I do encourage everyone to go ahead and do that. I want to thank you so much for being with us today, Katie, and hope to reconnect with you after the show.
Thank you. Yes. And next time I'll come back with my instruments. I have a beautiful handpan. We can do a musical version of the interview, and I'll talk less and play more.
Well, we don't mind hearing you talk, but yes, that would be so lovely. So thank you for that. And to the audience, please be sure to check out all the I Am a Lovable Me books today by clicking on the link at the very end of this video. They're available in hardcover as well as audio iBooks. And also, you'll never miss any of our great shows by watching us on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have a topic you think parents and caregivers want to hear about and would like to be a guest on my show, please message me on Facebook. I'm your host, Sharon Penchina, and I'll be back next week with some more great self-empowerment tips for you. Thank you all for joining in, and be sure to have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you for watching The Lovable Me Show. Also, if you have any questions for Lovable, go ahead and ask away. Don't forget to visit us next week, right here in the Facebook bugler.